So on camera, like I just always had this fascination with the cameras. I can remember back to, I think I was coming back from Disney World, like family vacation. I was like 6 years old. My mom had a cassette camcorder, and we were sitting layover, to go home, and I just picked it up and I started vlogging. Like I said I was 5 or 6, so this would have been like 2008 before YouTube and vlogging was like really massive. Yeah. And I was like just a little 6-year-old kid with a camcorder recording myself.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Chris. Welcome to my first grade life. No.
So Miss B today, she did this. No. No. So, and that's where I got started with cameras, and it fell off for a while. I got like hyper focused on school, had a few jobs in between there, and then I'd say like my junior year of high school, it was whenever the solar eclipse happened. I think that's when I really like wanted to shoot it, because I've always been fascinated with like space and meteorological things too. Catch me storm chasing one of these days.
That's so funny. Like Michael, who was just on the podcast right before you, he was talking about how like when he was a kid, he wanted to be a storm chaser. That's funny. I
love it. It's like and so many people call me crazy because they're like, you're gonna die, and I'm like, I'll die in a tornado. That's dope. Like that's a cool story.
But I'm gonna die anyway. Why not?
Exactly.
Do it,
like they'll see me flying across the sky and be like, oh, there he goes. But no, and so the eclipse happened, and so I borrowed my mom's camera. She had a Nikon D5100. No one's gonna know what that is. 300 millimeter super telephoto lens. I took those like solar, glasses that you'd wear for the eclipse, and I cut a bunch of them up and took the filter that let you like look at the sun, and I taped a bunch of them together with clear packing tape to make a filter for my lens so it wouldn't burn the sensor. And I went out and I shot the eclipse. I took the day off school and I just went out and did it with my dad. And since then, I've shot a lot of like astrophotography stuff, Superwolf, Blood Moon in 2019. And I was like, yo, this is kind of fun. And to learn how to shoot the eclipse, I had to just dive into research, like just teach myself how to do it, because it was like a perfect case, because I had this way I had a deadline, which was the day of the eclipse. It was like mid-August, and I had to learn how to use a piece of equipment. And after that, I was like, yo, this is great. And so I started researching different cameras. I was probably a sophomore at the time, like mid-sophomore year of high school. And so I didn't have a lot of money. I had never had a job before at that point. I got a job at a skating rink to help fund my expensive hobby. And
boy, how expensive is it?
Oh my God. If you heard just the amount that I spent today on a new lens and some gear.
Yeah, it's probably a semester's tuition.
About half. But no, it's stupid expensive, but once you have it, it's kind of an investment. It lasts forever. Yeah. Not the cameras, but the lenses and stuff, they last forever. And I just started diving into it head first. And that was, I said I was a junior when I like really dove into photography, so it's been 4 years since then. And I haven't looked back like one bit. Nice. And that's behind the camera. But I've also, on the flip side of that, that's me learning how to do photography, videography. On the flip side of that, I've also, not to expose myself here,
You've already done it. You haven't even said a word about it yet.
You know what it is.
Committed.
Not to expose myself, but I had a YouTube channel when I was like 10, 11 years old. I'd film like gaming videos, Minecraft, Happy Wheels, stuff like that. In my bedroom, using like whatever free software was available to record my screen and use a cheap webcam my dad had. And that even drew some bit with like production and live streaming. And there was a moment, no one probably knows who this is, but Molt, he like does Clash of Clans stuff on YouTube. He has like 2 million subscribers, but back before he was super big, he probably had like 60,000 subscribers at the time. He like rated my stream, and I had like 4,000 people in my live stream. I was 12 years old. I was like, I have no clue what to do. Like now looking back on that, I'm like, I could have capitalized on that and like turned that into something, but I was like shell-shocked. I was like, I was just paralyzed. I had no clue what to do.
It's really funny that you're... I didn't know that there was like this missing component to what I'm engaged in as a parent now until you're explaining this to me at the moment, because your parents are probably just older enough that like they don't have the conceptualization of how to guide a 12-year-old through the creative process of like managing a YouTube audience now. But like, I'm 32 with 11-year-olds in the house going, I'm about to have to navigate them through the creative process of managing a YouTube account.
Well, it's funny you brought that up because I actually want to give a shout out to my dad, who he is a commander in the Air National Guard. He's done public relations for 30 years. He was a photographer for the base paper for a number of years. This is what he did, as a career, and not like photography, videography per se, but definitely along the realm of marketing, public relations, writing, stuff like that. And so he has been like a backbone to my growth and success, because anytime I have a question that I don't know the answer to, he's my first person I ask. And if he doesn't know, then Google. But like, I feel like a lot of people don't have that, and I'm very, very grateful that I had that as a resource to go to.
Well, that is a spot-on point for a transition, because this is something that you're going to have, is the audience, something to reference and look back here for episode 86 of the WTF Carbondale podcast, where we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives, and we tie it all back to this little old place we call home, Carbondale, Illinois. And I'm excited to have a guest that kind of fits one of my molds of somebody that I've never met before, right? Like, I love doing the conversation with folks where it's like, it really is 100% square one exploratory conversation. We've gotten to do a little bit of, getting to know each other as you've done some photos around the building this evening, but it's just been a really good precursor to this conversation. I'm glad you were able to make the time for this, and
I'm glad to be here.
It's to have a parent be able to guide you through a process like this. I mean, it's generational knowledge. I mean, what does it feel like to have that as an underpinning of what will be your long-term success?
I didn't have to read a lot of books. My dad did all of that for me. And it gave me a head start. Right? So I'm a cinema major at SIU, senior, graduating this December.
Even though you're only 19, but we'll get to that point shortly.
And, I got that head start because of self-teaching, but also having that resource, you know? And I don't want to say he taught me most of what I know, but he was there for encouragement. And in points where I got stuck, he was definitely there to keep moving me along, right? So it was more of just a guide, I want to say, or like I probably avoided, I don't know if I did, but I probably avoided a lot of like failures and like shortcomings because he was there like, maybe you shouldn't do that. I have an LLC founded for the sole reason that I wanted to go shoot video for a business, and my dad was like, I don't want them to sue us. So he had me form an LLC. He had no clue how to do that, so that was all on me to research and figure out how to form a business. But still, there was that guidance that, okay, that's something I'd never considered before. Like, what happens if they don't like my product and they try to sue for damages or anything like that? That's something that never crossed my mind. I was 17 at the time. And he was there to just point me in the right direction, So it's definitely been a great resource to have.
So you guys live in the Metro East? Does your dad work out of Scott Air Force Base then, or is that?
That's the reason we moved there, is Scott Air Force Base. He was active duty for 12 years, and then he took some time off, worked at Veterans Affairs and DRS Technologies, other companies around the St. Louis area. And then I want to say 6 or 7 years ago now, he jumped back into the National Guard. And so now he's a lieutenant colonel, commander of the 131st Air Logistics Readiness Squadron. I think I nailed that. Right. It's always like this big long title that I can't remember. But so he jumped back into the Air National Guard. So it's part-time. He works at National Geospatial Intelligence Agency as his full-time job.
Dude, people don't realize, and I've had like a small mention of this on the podcast with somebody before, I can't remember who, but like the amount of like geospatial, like low Earth orbit, or I don't even know if I'm saying the right thing here, but like just anything that is in orbit around the Earth right now that's like documenting anything from your Google Maps to like high resolution, like military imagery that we'll never see ourselves
ever, right? And we don't even know if they have.
Like that stuff exists
Yeah.
Because of the activity at Scott Air Force Base in the surrounding area.
Yep. And I have no clue what he does at his job. I know he's an editor. So
Yeah.
he looks at things and he edits them.
Yeah.
But other than that, when he got that job, there was people showing up at our house interviewing neighbors and stuff, just all the time. So he could get a top secret security clearance.
Yep.
But yeah, I have no clue what goes on day to day at his job. And that's weird because most people are like, yeah, my dad does this. And it's a good conversation starter. And I just have to be like, no clue.
My dad can't say a thing. Cool.
Yep.
All right, we'll move on from this conversation then, just for safety's sake.
We don't want to impede on anything.
Right.
If the government's watching this, you're not.
Right.
You're not watching this.
So what brought you to SIU and Carbondale? Like, how'd you make the jump from the Metro East to here?
So I was looking at, communication schools for cinema, especially.
Mm-hmm.
And Webster University was a bid first choice.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything else was New York or Chicago, and I
Mm-hmm.
really didn't want to go to Chicago.
Yeah.
And it was just Webster University is a private university. Tuition was through the roof.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really don't want to spend that much. And I was in a meeting one day with the head of Running Start program at SWIC. And she was like, yeah, SIU is doing this big scholarship right now. It's the University Excellence and the Chancellor Scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, you should apply for that. And I was like, okay. And so I did. And I honestly didn't have a second pick for a school. I didn't have any other schools lined up. I was just like, okay, they're giving me money. Cool.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm going to go.
Well, and that ties into the thing of being self-taught, and so many of these industries now, whether it's computer science or film and television like this, that really the schooling is the paper backup to the knowledge that you're going to gain just by going out there and doing the work.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, even just being in a place like this right now.
Yeah.
I'm picking up little bits and pieces. I call it learning through osmosis.
Yeah.
Because you're just absorbing information.
Yeah.
And I think that works so much better than the old university structure of education. And yeah, there's a lot you learn from that. I think university teaches you how to think, but I don't think it actually teaches what you need to know for your career.
The technical components of
Yep.
it. It's more of these socialization.
Especially it changes so quickly.
Oh, yeah.
What was true 2 years ago is not really true today.
Yeah, well, and I can't imagine what somebody who got a master's degree in the 80s, what that looks
film,
like.
you stick the film through the camera, wind it up, dark room, and I'm like, I got a picture, yeah.
Right? The difference between ISO as a function that you just scroll through versus ISO as
you have different film stocks,
yeah.
Yep.
There's an old photography instructor at SIU. He's not there any longer. He's retired. Dave Gilmore, who I rode motorcycles with. I've messaged him on Facebook. Haven't gotten back to him. It's been months, but I want to have a guy like that to talk to on the podcast who's been doing this for 50 plus years.
Kind of see the other end of this, the other side of the story, right?
There's just so much there, in the functional, technical components of mechanical photography. I guess I don't know if that's actually what you call old school photography or
We call it analog.
analog. Okay.
And we actually have this kind of a large crowd of people going back to analog for the sole purpose that so easily, I mean, on my camera, I can shoot 20 frames per second. I have a 128 gigabyte card. I can take 12,000 photos in a matter of minutes, right? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And there's this group of people that are we want to be more deliberate with our photos, because on film, analog cameras, once you take a picture, you expose the film, that is money out of your pocket.
Yeah.
Right? I have an SD card, I can dump and reload that SD card as many times as I want. But on film, you're invested into each picture you take. And so there's people jumping back into that because they're I don't want to just fire away and hope I got a good picture. They want to be deliberate about their compositions, deliberate about their exposure, their subject, all of that. And I don't know. I feel I could be one of those people if I knew how to shoot analog. I just don't.
Yeah.
So
you got time, man.
I can go buy a disposable camera from Walgreens and call it a day.
Right.
shoot on there.
Snap.
Yep.
Roll snap.
I mean, those pictures look great.
Yeah.
Honestly, I always used to think they're cheap little cameras, but they actually look like good pictures once you take them. Especially compared to a lot of people. I mean, phones have gotten crazy good nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was on a vacation, I am halfway planning to maybe go to Israel in January, and just as a retreat. and I want to bring my camera so bad. But at the same time, I'm like,
do I want to lug all this around?
Luggage check, you know, I'm carrying around thousands of dollars of equipment around a foreign country that's kind of war-torn. Like, do I want to do that? Or do I want to just take my phone and get some pretty damn good pictures regardless?
I mean, just take the phone. I'll tell you, my good friend Andrew, who hopefully I'll have on the podcast here just in the next week as he swings through town. I can't remember what country he went to. Somewhere in South America. And like he got jacked. Not like at knife point, like give me your stuff, but like he set his camera gear underneath his seat on a bus, and
someone grabbed it.
Yeah, they zipped it open or they cut it open. They pulled his gear, and that was that. And it's like we're talking about a guy who's traveled
all over the world,
probably 5 of however many continents, right?
7 continents,
Thank you. I wanted to say 7, and I was like, what if there's more than 7 continents?
Now you're making me second guess myself.
Right? It's like, has global warming caused 9 continents? I don't know. But so he's traveled all over the world, and like he let his guard down, thinking, oh, I'm just on vacation. I'm not shooting Syrian refugees in a Jordanian refugee camp. I'm not shooting in the mountains of Azerbaijan. I'm not on the beach in Australia. Like I'm just chilling in wherever I'm at. Like I can write it out. And he got ganked.
Yep.
And so yeah, man,
I've seen people
totally
in LA. Like there's been videos of like someone's dash cam. They were like making a left-hand turn, and some dude literally got out of the car, smashed the back window, grabbed a camera bag, and ran. Yeah, in traffic. And I'm like, it can happen anywhere. And
it's that easy. It's so much easier to take than it is to build the setting, right? It's like
it's so difficult.
Oh my god, to walk up, smash somebody's window, grab and go. That would suck.
I've told people before, I'm like, if I got any of my gear stolen, I don't think I would ever do photography again. I would just quit and be like, all right, I submit. I'm gonna join society. I'll be an accountant.
Nah. You'll never lose the bug, man. Now you're there.
I told my friend that, and he goes, "You'll do it alone."
What pulled you this direction? Because you taught, and we'll get into the stuff that you were telling me before the podcast. You're like, I'm a smart guy who got college credits in high school, and that's why I was able to like get through my bachelor's degree so quickly. But like, what drew you this direction versus any of the other ways that you could apply like your mental talents?
Well, so I was saying kind of at the beginning, I got like super hyper focused on school. So I did this program called Running Start. It's at Southwestern Illinois College or SWIC. It's in the Belleville area of like the Metro East St. Louis. And that allows people to get their associate's degree, or at least college credits if they're not so applied, while they're in college or while they're in high school. So I think my high school, between Belleville East and Belleville West, probably 2,000 people in my class total. 20 people tested and got selected for it. So there's like, basically, I think everyone took a test, and then out of the people that passed the test, they ranked them by GPA, and they chose the top 20. That's how they chose it. It's kind of a weird choice, in my opinion, because you could do the best on the test and have the lowest GPA and not get in. But that's how they selected the people for the program, and I took like 20 to 22 credit hours each semester for 2 years. And graduated with an Associates of Science and an Associates of Art, and that was a headache.
Yeah.
And then I came here, and it's been nice. I feel like I'm not in school, and I've been taking 16 credit hours each semester.
Because you're used to doing a lot more.
It feels like a vacation, but I mean, I'm just trying to get out of school, to be honest, like as soon as possible. This is my last semester. I said I'd graduate this December. And so I started last fall. So I've only been at SIU this is my 3rd semester plus a summer semester. But I'm just ready to get out. But I didn't do computer science for a while. All through my junior college experience or community college experience, I went through the calculus series. I tested into calculus 1, and they made me take trig anyways. That kind of sucked.
Those jerks.
I told my chemistry professor that, and he said, "That's actually fucking stupid. You should have told them assholes to let you into calculus." That's what he said, word for word. He was a great professor.
He professed what he felt.
Yeah.
What he felt was those fucking assholes.
One time this is an aside, but he was teaching chemistry one day, and someone called him, and he literally just looked at his phone and he goes, "God fucking damn it! I thought I put this piece of shit on silent." And he answered the call and was like, "I'm busy, I'm teaching," and then hung up. And I was just like sitting there, I was like, so. His name was Ted Dolter. If anyone knows him, he was great. He was one of my favorite professors I've had.
Is it interesting to like kind of see, as you're in this transition where teachers go from being this like, person on a pedestal in your life to being people that you're like, oh, these are just regular people who are just in a position to convey knowledge to me for the time, but like they're just as much of a person as I am as anybody else. Like, is it interesting getting to like start to experience that perspective on on individuals in your life?
I wouldn't say that happened at Switch. That happened more so at SIU because being self-taught, having my business and stuff, I'm able to pull bits of information from these professors, but most of this is stuff that I've learned years before.
Yeah.
And there's some stuff I'm teaching my professors and they're having me convey to the class as well. And it's weird because it's like, these are supposed to be people trained to teach me and I'm teaching them. Yeah. But and it's not a bad thing. It's not like a diss on the teachers in any way. It's just, we live in a place where there's so much shared knowledge and everyone knows something someone doesn't.
Yep.
Everyone has something to teach, everyone has something to learn. And I don't know, I think if you're not continuously learning, you're kind of wasting your time. Yeah. Like, even if you're in an environment that's not conducive to learn, you should still seek to learn something because there's so much knowledge in the world. So I think that's where that shift in mindset happened, is I'm like, wait, this is weird. I'm not like reading from a textbook anymore. I'm, learning through experience.
It's so... Father Brown was one of my early guests on the podcast, and his line has been for many, many years that it is the young people that have everything to teach the older people, right? And it's something that he's carried through in his public addresses during memorial services for Kishana, right? And it's something that you're speaking through right now, as one of those young people that has something to teach folks that are older than you, right? And
I think there's a flip side to that coin, though, because I think a lot of students hear that. Yeah. And they hear, oh, the old people should be learning from us. Yeah. But I think the flip side of the coin is young people should respect older people because they've been through it all before. Yeah. They have wisdom. Yeah, definitely. And so I think a lot of students don't respect the older people because they're like, what do they know? Yeah. We're in this new generation. We have new tech. We are kind of experts at this new tech because we grew up with it. But you should still respect the older people and be like, they have a lot to give that you may not even know they have to give. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because you look at things like just something as simple as a cut function inside of a film program, right? Why is it called the cut function?
Because you cut film.
Because you cut film, right? Like, why is the the graphic, some of the graphic designer stuff, like the red line or whatever the different things are in that world. It's because they came out of like a physical red line that we placed on a mat to shape a shape, right? It's just there is an origin for everything, and you just have to get an understanding of what the origin is for the action that you're in the midst of now.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think if I was a filmmaker 30 years ago when it was, or probably longer than that, 40 years ago when it was still super analog and I was editing film, I think I would not be in the, I would have quit. I would have been like, no. I'd have like made, computers are new, I'd have made some of those. Like, I don't know, just cutting up feet or meters or, miles of film.
Literally miles of film, yeah.
I don't think that sounds like an enjoyable time. Now I can hop onto my NLE and just edit away, spend a few hours on it.
What does NLE stand for?
Nonlinear editor.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So like Premiere Pro is the one that I use. I want to switch over to Final Cut, but that's kind of off topic.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's expensive and like a whole different like ecosystem to work in too.
The thing with Final Cut, the reason I want to switch to it is because Premiere, Apple came out with their M1 chip, which is just stupid powerful for no reason, and it's super inexpensive. And so I have an M1 Mac Mini, and Premiere is not optimized for it. And so my Canon R6, Premiere can't handle the highest end, like 10-bit, 422, 4K footage out of that. Premiere just can't handle it. It breaks down. Yeah. But Final Cut can just smoothly edit it. And I'm like
Butter.
nerfing myself shooting on this camera right now. I'm shooting 1080p 10-bit instead of 4K 10-bit just because my computer can't handle it. But if I switch softwares, then it would be able to. So
I mean, it's you got to match all of your equipment together. That's the other complicated part that, like, okay, you're like, oh, well, you can take a good picture. It's one thing to take a good picture. It's another thing to have the knowledge of how to navigate different lenses, different bodies, different editing programs, different lighting systems, different sound systems. I mean, there's so much going on. You know, like, heck, this podcast is a good example right now. Just the lack of audio quality that the last several episodes have been because of a very specific component to the ecosystem. We're in a room that has bare walls, even though I'm trying to change that slowly but surely. And
I wonder if your audio sounds better than mine does, just because you have the wall of foam behind you.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, so from that, so the interesting thing about this setup, the audio on that microphone is less echoey than the audio on this microphone because that's got the feet on it. It's got rubber feet to the floor. This has the cylindrical bass on it. So the bass on this actually reverberates back up into this microphone.
This is more like a shock mount. I just totally knocked that, so I probably didn't sound great.
You're good. No, all your levels are still just fine.
Perfect.
You're safe and in place. But you're right now you're using your skills with the daily. Is this your first semester of the DE, or have you been at the DE?
This is my second one. So I was a staff photographer last semester. This semester, I'm the multimedia editor. Newly created position. There's like the ed board, and a lot of people don't know like what editor in a newspaper means. Doesn't mean I'm editing photos and video as like my full-time gig there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a manager.
Yeah, you're reviewing other people's work.
Yeah, exactly. And then I manage what they're doing, send them out on things, delegate roles, whatnot. And I don't get paid enough for what I do.
Neither
does Ore, who's the editor in chief. Her especially. I mean, she's working so much. I'm hitting like consistently 32, 35 hours a week. I only get paid for 20 of those each week. And but you know, it's a good learning experience. It's good to go on a resume in the future. And I think my favorite part of the job has definitely been meeting people. I mean, I would never have met you if it weren't for me needing to come here for a shoot.
Like, I need a picture.
Yeah, and you're like, hey, you're like the new Brian. And I'm like, you know Brian? But...
Dude, it's so funny, and it worked out well. I was like, man, you really are playing the replacement for Brian just for this day. We were gonna try and shoot today, but he had to get to DuQuoin for stuff, so we're gonna shoot next week sometime. His podcast.
Well, I beat him onto it too. Oh, his podcast. Okay.
Yeah. Well, no.
His podcast episode.
Podcast.
So I beat him on here too.
Yeah,
I beat him. I beat Ore.
You lapped everybody, but now I've got a really good reason to get everybody on the podcast sometime soon.
Yep.
And I've been meaning to I got Ore's phone number like 4 or 5 months ago and have just not texted her like I needed to. Be like, hey, what's up? But let her get settled into the semester, get going, and then there, which, you know, I do want to touch on it just for a little bit, is you know, what you have been covering just in the past couple days, right? Kishana's death, you know, has opened up for a flood of activity on your end, and you have had to be there for all of this activity.
I've worked way more hours this week than I planned to.
I mean, is this one of the first kind of emotional events that you've had to engage in as a photojournalist?
It definitely is. Last semester I didn't really hit anything like. You know, this event really made me realize the effect my work has on a community. Because before it was like, okay, highlight this cool thing that happened, or highlight, you know, this or that, go capture this sports event. It kind of felt like just like, oh, in case you missed it, you know, for the community. But now it's like people are searching for answers. People are searching for information.
Yeah.
People want to know what happened.
Yeah.
And it made me realize how much of an impact what we do in journalism has on that very specific thing. Yeah. Not to toot our own horn, but we were one of the first people to cover the vigil and the events as a whole that day.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just, if we hadn't gotten out that information, and if no other newspaper had, people would have just been in the dark.
Yeah.
You know, people rely on journalists to get information. And that's kind of a burden too, because then we have to be trusted to portray accurate information.
Yep.
And there's a lot of room for error in that whole formula that has been built up over a few hundred years.
People, and the other additional struggle that you have as a student journalist, right, is that you get as much room for error as anybody that's been doing this for decades has, right? Like you are held to the same standard that any other journalists are, because the role is the role no matter what.
Yep. People still rely on us for information, so we have to be just as credible, just as accurate, just as quick to get out news.
Yep.
But on top of that, another challenge that student journalists face is people expect that credibility, but they don't give us the respect for it either. Yeah. We've had instances in the past where people won't talk to us for the sole reason that we are student journalists.
Which is silly.
Yeah.
It's silly.
Exactly. Or like they speak condescending about us for the same reason. We're student journalists. And it's like, yeah, we don't work full time in journalism at an established organization, but the Daily Egyptian's been around since 1916. We have this year's managing editor. Her name's Annie. She worked at CNN for 20 to 30 years, I think. And she's the one overseeing everything that we do. So it's like, if people knew that, I think they would see us more of like, okay, they have some credibility and some support to them. But a lot of people think we're just like, I don't know, monkeys in a newsroom typing up random things.
No,
I don't think they really see us like that, but like it fits the metaphor.
Yep.
You know.
Well, and the other thing that people miss as well, and this is something that I've got to credit folks for, because I just had some minor corrections on a piece last semester where I just reached out to, I can't even remember who. Oh my gosh, why did I just forget her name? She's now writing for the Southern this semester.
Callie?
Thank you, Callie.
She was the editor-in-chief last semester.
And she, for a minor, minor change in just how I may have been quoted, something I was like, hey, can you guys just look at this, and here's the more specific reference here. Do you mind to just look at that and make sure that everything's accurate possible? They're like, absolutely no problem. Like the responsiveness, right? That being in a student journalist role, that you're not quite at that point of burnout that some folks may be, and like look at a correction as a begrudging thing, right?
Yep.
You look at a correction as a way to grow, and like, yes, I want to respond to this, I want to engage with this, and so long as somebody's just kind enough to me about it, it's
constructive
be okay.
criticism. Yeah, it's constructive criticism. But we have had instances in the past. There's certain sources that just won't speak with us.
Yeah.
Because we've messed something up in the past.
Yeah.
And I think this goes for any journalistic
no doubt.
company, is if we build bad relations with sources, then they won't want to give us information.
Yep.
And there's certain people in the community that are such prominent sources of information. They continuously are involved. Nancy Maxwell is a good example of that,
absolutely.
because she is so involved in the community and with these different outreaches. And for something like what tragically happened to Kishana, she has been a invaluable source to go to, because she's leading these vigils, she's leading this and that for the community. And if we had a bad relationship with her, we wouldn't have access to any of that information.
Yep.
And there's certain sources in the past that we have built bad relationships with that we just don't have access to information to because of that. And we're sorry. If you guys want to reach out to us again,
we're always here.
Yeah. And, we're maybe more apt to that than most journalists, because once again, we're student journalists. So we're maybe more prone to mistakes, but like you were saying, we're held up to the same standards.
Yeah. No, it's man, I appreciate it. And it's cool just being around it, right? To see time and time again how our news environment locally is impacted by the work that starts out of that that little newsroom. Is the room number 1245 or
I don't know. I have no clue.
1248, something like that.
I think 1248 maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Communications building.
What comes out of there and where people go, and if we didn't have that in our region specifically, that we could just as easily be a news desert as many other rural communities around the country are, right? And there's simply no vacuum that some jerk with a Facebook page or a group or a website or email list or Instagram account, can fill a void of like, real journalism.
Yeah.
From a professional perspective. So.
Well, there's been a lot of things that you guys have posted on WTF Carbondale that I've like seen and been like, hey, should we cover this?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like sort of the more grassroots organizations that are less standardized usually get things before us and usually do things pretty damn well.
Well, so the interesting part on that, right, is that there is now a step or a layer between an action happening and that news organization. That is some level of self-reporting in the middle where people are projecting their own story out into the ether, and then how does that then get worked up through the steps of legitimization, whether it's just somebody making a post on their personal page and it being shared hundreds of times to somebody just posting the right thing in the right way that the right person at a news organization sees and says, that's newsworthy. We need to have our eyes on that. The broader community needs to see it.
When I also think, I don't know how much, like, what your process is with WTF Carbondale, but definitely there's less, like, censorship there. You guys are a lot more able to just cover anything and everything in the community.
Well, a lot of the idea is, like, giving that broad communicative space to the community as a whole, right? I try really diligently to limit it by people who are actually physically here, right? I'm not 100% on that, but like that's since probably about 6 months into the group project, I've been focused on that component for the group communication that is kind of the two-way street function of the project as a whole. And then, outside of, I've kind of compared it to gardening as of late. Like, I have to go in and I have to pull some weeds out every now and then, but for the most part, try and leave as much as I can. But so long as it's not interfering with like the rest of the, the flowering of information, then for the most part it can stay. That allows people, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to go feel comfortable putting this out there, and maybe there will be a response, and maybe there will be anything from a city official to a news reporter to a neighbor that they'll just let me borrow something. It's like, how do you just make that connection so that the information can allow people to achieve an objective that they wouldn't have otherwise achieved without having that information accessible? That's kind of an underpinning of it.
Yeah, and people are maybe more likely to tell you information than an actual news organization, because a news organization can be a little intimidating.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, they're going to go and blow this out of proportion. But with you, they're like, oh, they might make a funny post about this. And it's so important because it's like, otherwise that information never gets out there.
Well, I mean, it's as silly as it sounds, like the driving in town in the past couple of weeks that has been like a great note, right? And we're having a good laugh about it right now. We're like mocking the fact that we're all like talking about how crazy the traffic is because it's humorous on one hand, like, we're all just posting and talking trash about driving because it all sucks. But then at the same time, there was a rollover right in the middle of 13 this morning that like shut down.
Was there
traffic.
really?
Oh yeah, dude! It was like a major thing that occurred.
Oh my goodness!
That probably injured some people. That had an impact on a lot of folks actually just traversing through town. That was a major cleanup. It didn't knock out power this time, but the one a week or two ago.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, that one was crazy.
These are things that really occur, and it's like, okay, well, what information do you share around these things to have some sort of impact, or what you would hope would be some sort of impact positively on whether people are going to drive better or not in town.
When I don't even think the Daily Egyptian covered that power outage, right? But I remember being at Bandanas. It was like move-in night or the day after.
Yeah, it was like right in the middle of it.
And we had power, and we had some people come in, and they're like, hey, no one else has power. And I stepped outside, and it was just pitch black everywhere. And I was like, this is really weird. The Circle K across the street from Bandanas, no power. And I'm like, how do we still have power, first of all? But then what happened was my immediate next question. And if it weren't for pages like yours, I wouldn't have known. And, still the Daily Egyptian hasn't covered that and what happened, to my knowledge.
Well, and some of these things, right, as well, it's like, okay, what is the thing that needs covered in the moment, right? Like a power outage due to a car wreck may not always be, the news article needs to be picked up. And the other side of this, right, which is one of the things that you told me you're struggling with right now, is the staffing component of it. Like, how much time, energy, and talent do you have to devote to an offshoot that's a smaller story like a car wreck versus something more major. And that's the struggle that newsrooms across the country are facing right now.
Yep. And I want to step aside for a minute. If any of you guys out there, he mentioned staffing. He mentioned staffing issues. If you have experience with the camera, photo or video, and are interested in developing that and having some real experienced people train you and teach you more, we need people. We need hires like bad. So definitely you can reach out to me, cbishop at, is it cbishop? cbishop at dailyegyptian.com.
Comment in the comments below if you need to too. We'll take care of that. It's just
I know my personal emails really well, but for some reason I don't know my journalism email off the top of my head. I think that's right.
But so what has that been like for you? I mean, is this one of the first kind of management roles that you've been in? As far as is this like square one, the first management role that you've been in before?
Yep.
So I mean, what has that been like? Not just being in a management role for the first time, but being in a management role for the first time and being limited on the resources that you have access to at the same time.
And not getting paid for the work that I'm doing to the full extent. It's kind of been challenging, especially because I am just as much manager as I am staff member, right? Like currently with the lower amount of staff that we have, I'm going on just as many shoots per week as my staff members that I am managing, right? Luckily, I kind of have a partner to manage with. She's the photo editor. I'm the multimedia editor. So I try to oversee more video-centric things, and she tries to oversee more photo-centric things. And I was mentioning to you before the podcast, we founded this new position, multimedia editor, for the sole purpose of branching off into social media video, stuff like that, new trendy things. And we haven't been able to branch off into that because I'm kind of being pulled back into this staff position just due to the lack of resources. And just before coming here, I held a meeting with my staff, like literally minutes before I drove over here. And I was just cramming everything in, having another job, having school. And it's like, I don't know. I'm definitely excited to graduate because then it's like I can probably manage and focus more on managing at wherever I end up, and whether or not I even have a management role. Because I love going out and shooting. Like, it's so much fun, but management's still important, And my dad and I had a conversation about joining like the Guard or the Army or the Air Force at one point, and I was like, I want to be an officer because officers make bank. And he's like, do you want to have a camera in your hand, or do you want to be managing people and never leave your office? And I'm like, I want to have a camera in my hand. He's like, then you don't want to be an officer, And it's like, management made so much money, but they lose out on the field shoots and the actual fun aspects of why a lot of people start working somewhere.
Well, in the mix of it too, especially if you stay the private professional track, right? That you can be a mix of a manager and shooting, work yourself into a director of cinematography for your own system of people that are working for and with you. That yes, you get to. I'm gonna be hands on with 5 cameras at the same time through 5 different people in a room with me. I mean, I know the feel, man. I mean, just being in the room, and even though I don't have the same technical expertise as the people that I may work with to produce something, the reality is like I've got a vision in my head of what I want something to look like. So I'm going to tell people like, hey, let's set up X, Y, and Z places, and then still feel like I'm vicariously working through them as I'm in the room watching them shoot and move and be the consummate professionals that they are.
No, it's definitely a challenge. My mind went somewhere else.
Go with it, man.
What's the highest viewed podcast you've gotten?
So here's the thing. I've got 3 places for distribution: Facebook, YouTube, and then audio distribution.
Plus Apple Music, Spotify,
So I run through Anchor for the audio. That comes out after the videos do, because I just rip the audio straight from the videos once they're on YouTube and then dump that onto Anchor, and it distributes. It says that my numbers are quite low, like maybe 10 listens on the audio podcast, which with the I don't think that's...
I was about to say, like, I see like 200 views on YouTube. I'm like, I don't know if that's... and YouTube's probably the least active one that you have.
It is. YouTube's really there as like the catalog, right? So if ever I lose something somewhere else, I can always pull it out of YouTube and replace it elsewhere. So YouTube highest view is probably like 300 or 400, nothing crazy. So and then Facebook, which the numbers aren't as realistic as they could or should be, right? Because anything that's over a 10-second view on YouTube counts as a view. So so if I have 2,000 views on Facebook, I meant to say Facebook. So if I have 2,000 views on Facebook, of those 2,000 views, maybe a couple hundred of them are actual watch throughs.
Gotcha.
Right. And the rest of them may be anywhere from 10 seconds to 10 minutes in observation. In those, I think a standard one will get 800 to 1,200 views, and a good one will probably get around 2,500.
Okay.
And that's usually in kind of the first 2 weeks on the time frame. So yeah, those are kind of your benchmarks. High number on Facebook is 2,500. High number on YouTube is like 300. High number on audio only is 10, but that number is probably not correct.
So let me tell you this then, all right? I want to beat that with this episode.
Yeah, go with
Just because I'm an optimistic guy, and people at Bandanas told me the good positive vibes only guy. Like, I don't know, I just have a really optimistic outlook. Even if we don't hit that, I want each of you guys watching this right now, share it, all right? Anyone you know, all right? I might be funny, I don't know.
Yeah, hit
maybe a little bit.
Camera. You're speaking.
I might be a
right
little bit funny, but like probably worth a share, right? So just share it. You're probably in a frat or something. You got like 6 people in your house right now you can show it to, like alone.
Hey, and here's the deal. If you guys share it and like you got frat presidents or like notable people, like
they can be in this seat.
Yeah,
they can be right here.
And it's a surprisingly comfortable seat for an old metal chair.
I've been here for how long have we been doing this? Like an hour?
46 minutes, 36 seconds.
I've been sitting here for 46 minutes, and my butt does not hurt.
Yeah, it's all gravy, man.
So share it, because I want to smash that goal.
There you go.
I would love to.
You know what? And I appreciate. Here's the thing that I struggle with. Right, is the folks that are positive in the toxic positivity way. We can't acknowledge a flaw or a problem type of deal. We're just going to coat it over with this toxic positivity and go from there. Like, do you find yourself in a balance of like, yeah, I'm going to be the positive guy, but I'm not going to be the guy that like just swipes away the bad stuff and acts like it doesn't exist type deal?
In that case, I'm like, we can do better.
Right.
Right. Like if something bad happened, something bad happened, but let's do better.
Yeah.
Right. It's not the end of the world. Not by any means. And there's a lot to grow from, but.
Did you get any of that mindset from your mom? I know we talked a lot about your dad, but oh no, don't go blank on mom.
Oh, I don't know.
It was her video camera in the airport when you were 6 years old, man.
I definitely did from her like this very caring sense about me and just genuine kindness and responsibility, but. I don't know about the positive part.
No.
I love my mom to death.
No. Hey, man, no. If she's the balance, right? If dad's the positive and mom's the realist, right? Like that's a good...
maybe. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's probably how it actually is. But.
No, I mean, that's the reality of a lot of households, man. That like. You got your dreamers on one side, and you got your grounded folks on the other, and somewhere in between that, you have some decent children.
My dad and I are the exact same person, I swear.
Yeah.
I already mentioned how we both grew up kind of doing the same sort of things, and he went on and did public relations and advertising his entire career. Not advertising, but same sort of realm. Like you were saying, it's all one thing.
Yeah.
And, but he invents stuff.
Yeah.
And he is a thinker. He just is constantly thinking about the most absurd things. And I'm the exact same way. And we're vocal about it, right? Like I have 1,000,001 ideas just swimming around my head at any given point, and none of them will ever work. Not none of them, but like most of them will never work.
Yeah, but you got to have them.
Yeah, and I'm like writing them down. I'm taking notes on whatever piece of paper I can find.
Yeah.
I was on a caterer the other day, and I came home and I was like, I got an idea. I'm gonna record this into my phone.
Yeah.
And he's the exact same way. But I don't know. Part of me wants to succeed in something like that just because my dad never did. Not in a way of putting him down, but because I think he sacrificed a lot of what he could have done
Are we talking about
to
like
raise
the
a family.
entrepreneurial stuff and like
And I think he sacrificed a lot of that to raise a family and support a family, right?
Have a stable job, have the assured
especially because we were a one-income family. My
Yeah.
mom, gave up her career to stay at home and raise my brother and I. And so I really want to succeed just because of the sacrifice him and my mom made.
Yeah.
Because if him and I are so similar, he 100% could have. 100% could have. But he just didn't because he, worked 60 hours a week to have enough income for us, so that's definitely where I'm at.
the being in business early now, right, is a space where you're set up where you can take the risk, right? Like
I've had this same conversation with him. I know where this is going.
Well, go ahead and take us there then, my friend.
I mean, yeah, no, like you were saying, I can take risks. I can afford to lose every penny in my pocket.
Yeah.
And not worry about it, right? Now, I don't want to default on a loan or anything like that, but
But you understand the space of privilege that you occupy. Right?
Exactly, and I have, especially societal norms.
Yeah.
A 35-year-old man, it's not really normal for him to live with his parents, but a 19-year-old kid, if I lost every penny in my pocket, I could go live with my parents and no one would bat an eye.
Yeah.
It's okay to be poor when you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that because they want to show off this flashy lifestyle and whatnot. But you don't have to at this age. You can dump all your money into something you're passionate about and hope for the best and work your ass off. And I'm only doing some of those. I probably should work a lot harder for what the goals that I have. But it's a balancing act. And I kind of plan to once I graduate is hit the ground running and hope for the best. And if everything fails, then, I have a degree that I can get a job with. Yeah. But before then, I would like to really give it one last good go of can I
Dude, let me make it? I gotta tell you straight up, man. I've been rolling the dice on entrepreneurial endeavors since I was your age, legitimately. And I said, oh my God, I can't believe I just used the phrase since I was your age. Oh, it was painful. I was I just took.
It made me feel a lot younger than I am. I don't know.
But I mean, just the difference in I'm burned through probably I don't know, between 4 and 6 business projects in different ways. Since my early days in college to now, and I'm just now
finding
one stride where I'm this makes sense. And somebody that, especially for having always known that media and entertainment and information was always the space that I was going to be in and wanted to be in. I just tried to transfer that activity into different spaces. It was where am I going with this? It was having to realize the amount of time that goes into building something of value in the media space. It's one thing to start an HVAC business, right? And you're okay, I'm in an HVAC business. I've got a truck. I'm going to go out here. I'm going to go ask people to let me install HVAC at their place, right? But in the media business, you've got to build a portfolio and this credibility in industry in a way that's not just B2B.
A network. Yeah.
B2C sales or something like that. It is having to produce, not get paid, and then at some point in time, strike just the right chord, and now you're off to the races.
And a lot of times it's not even strike the right chord and you're off to the races. You're one step after the other. You're oh, this is working a little bit better than that. Yeah. And then you do it more and more and you're oh, maybe I do this instead. And you slowly build to where people are oh, this is good content. Yeah. And then it's you have a formula that works, and finding that formula takes time. And like you were saying, you don't get paid for most of it.
And that's what you're working on right now, because you want to do the videos to teach people like me who have the limited knowledge of how to use this whole set of equipment that's in front of me, of how to use it better.
When I have experience, my business has been in business. I organized it last April, mid-pandemic. Nice. I think a lot of people did that. They were either couch potatoes the entire time, or they're I have a lot of free time. And I was definitely more on the side of let me take a massive risk and see how it pays off. And so in that time, I've shot a lot of weddings, a lot of real estate photo, video, done a lot of portraits. And so I have, what's it been now, a year and a half of experience of actual professional photo video services. Just like, yeah, I was doing photo video for 2-3 years before that, working at a large church in video production. But I didn't really have that like professional experience until I actually like got myself under a business, got work going. And so that gives me some credibility for that video content that I've been wanting to make. And I definitely want to switch to more of like a content gauged business model because it's a lot more sustainable, I think. You're not relying on, well, so how many people live in Carbondale? Like 30,000? Less?
We are at 21,000.
Ish.
Yeah, just a little bit over 21,000 as per the latest census.
So 21,000 people. As someone in my business, I am looking at a very small percentage of those people that need my services.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm reliant on them for my income, right? But with content and the internet, there's billions of people in the world that I can reach, you know? And so I definitely want to switch to something that's such a large audience. It's more saturated, right? But it's just a giant pool of people that can pay me money.
Well, and the other side of it, right, is when you bring a certain level of quality and understanding to it, right? There are all sorts of people that do it and do it okay, but there are only a handful of people that do it and do it very well.
And I need to reach that point of doing it very well. I don't think I'm there yet.
Yeah,
but.
oh yeah, dude, yeah. You got all the time. I mean, I think of somebody like an MKBHD, right? That
I love him.
I mean, I take a lot of my cues in digital media from MKBHD and Doug DeMuro. Both of them are, so Doug DeMuro is a car reviewer, and he's just a little bit older than I am, which makes him very young for automotive journalism in general. And both of these guys produce essentially reviews, right? And what I would define as critical media, right? And just watching how these guys are value where they look to derive value from their criticism and understandings of products that they share with their audience, right? And having that critical component, no matter what you're studying, whether it is new phones like MKBHD or cars like Doug DeMuro or makeup or just whatever it may be, food. I mean, just any number of things that exist out there. If you can understand how to break it down for the audience, you're going to develop that audience. If you can do it in the morsels that are the right times and the right digestive pieces, and that's what you were talking about as well, was like, you don't just want to go out there and make, here's a 30-minute tutorial on how to use my Canon.
Exactly. Like, because, okay, my friends that I'm like close with, they know me for 3 things. I can talk for hours on camera stuff, weather, and religion. But focusing on the first 2, like camera stuff and weather, I'm like an encyclopedia about, like, just fact after fact about information. Most of that's like completely irrelevant. But like, I could totally make videos just talking for hours, teaching someone. Like, if I were to teach you video, how to do it,
which I need all the help I can get. This is just as imperfect as any other video that I've shot.
I don't think it'd be nearly even remotely close to what I'm trying to produce for the internet, because like, I could talk to you for hours about a single topic. Yeah. But the person on the internet doesn't want to watch a 2-hour video about shutter speed. Yeah. They want to watch like 2 minutes, like, how do I get my shutter speed working on my camera? And so that's kind of what I'm having to do. That's the big struggle, is like, when I sit down and put pen to paper, or I guess typing, I'm like, okay, how do I condense like an hours long conversation into 5 minutes and make it informative and get all the right bits of information in there, and also obtainable and accessible, because I have to refrain from using terms that I know that other people don't, and I have to go at a slow enough speed that people can follow along and learn with. And it's challenging. You also have to
go at a fast enough speed
that they don't get bored. It's a balancing act. And honestly, I've only made 1 video so far in that series that I plan to make. Mostly because I'm working at Bandana so much. But I told my boss last week, hey, I can only work Tuesday, Thursday mornings. And if that doesn't work, then I'll put in my 2 weeks. Because I was like, I'm getting busier and busier at the Daily Egyptian. I just need to cut back on making money, because that's really what Bandanas was. And I need to focus on something that I'm passionate about and just need to dump time into it. and we'll see. I've made one video. I'm still figuring out the formula, still fine tuning it, but maybe I'll be back on the show like 6 months from now and be like, hey, I don't know. Do you even do recurring guests?
So here's my thought on the recurring guest stuff, and this is what I've been having to manage out. So I'm at episode 86 right now. I was really hoping to hit 100 episodes before the year mark for my first published episode. It's like September 13th. I can still possibly make it. Like it's still doable.
Okay. Just reach out to Ore.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I mean, I may just have a bunch of Daily Egyptian folks come through. Boom, 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 boom. Here's the entire roster.
Made a playlist about it on YouTube, like Daily Egyptian people you've never heard of.
Legitimately, I did do. Even though you'll, I'll share these with you afterwards with the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute. I had those folks on. I've had. Other sets of folks that have been thematic in nature through the podcast. So I'm hoping to keep up with that. What was the question again? It was
do you do recurring guests?
Recurring guests. Thank you. So yes, I'm going to. I have done one recurring guest thus far. That was because they were running for office at 2 different points in time. Jessica Bradshaw, and then I want to do recurring guests like on maybe like a multi-year run, like really, 2 to 3 years out, you get good reflection. 6 months is good, but like that's oversaturation of a single guest.
Yeah.
Like I want to see like
people wouldn't be like, wasn't he just on here? Like,
it's almost like a time capsule. Like, okay, you're going to go out and you're going to live your life for the next 3 to 5 years after this. And maybe at some point in time in those 3 to 5 years from now, you'll swing back through Carbondale, or you'll still be here ascending, the digital ranks of the world around you because you can do it from anywhere. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that you'll come back on and we'll go, well, let's talk about what life was like.
Remember, like you were 19 and you sat down in this barren room, and now you're gonna be like out in a giant studio, and I'm gonna be like still me probably. I don't know.
We'll have a live studio audience and the whole shebang. It'll be a whole.
You'll hear claps and stuff, and
but I mean, you'll and then we'll be able to see like what people have grown from. Again, the previous podcast.
You'll be the next Joe Rogan, and
do what?
I said you'll be the next Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Well, here's in with some sense about me, dude. It's so disappointing. Like I want Joe Rogan to be so much better than he is, and it's just not happening. And I don't want to go to this rabbit hole.
I don't even really watch him that much.
It's just a bummer because I'm like, oh, it's the comedian guy, and oh, the guy on the digital media side, but also the guy that's hawking garbage supplements just the same. What are we doing here, man? Like, people are trusting you for information. Like, you got to do better.
I think that's kind of important because that's kind of the space between digital personalities and news. Is becoming.
It's very muddy.
It's a thin line.
Very muddy.
And it's people are trusting personalities instead of objective news sources. And on both sides of the spectrum, it's making things complicated. And
it's again a space that I occupy with this WTF Carbondale platform is like understand that people are trusting it in part as a news source, but also looking at it as a personality. And
it has WTF in the name. Like, I don't know. I look at that and I'm like,
you take it.
Because when I first started, I was like, oh, there's going to be stupid shit that happens in Carbondale.
Yeah.
And for a lot of it is. And I'm like, that's the only place I see it because Carbondale, a lot of stupid shit happens here.
It's a wacky place, man.
It really is. You would never expect it. It's like in the little foresty area of Southern Illinois, it's just a little pocketed town. And it's like, whoa, all of that happens there? What?
Yep.
You would never guess. You'd be like, oh, St. Louis, I could see it happening. That's a big city. Carbondale with 21,000 people. What?
Yep. I mean, I always kind of explain it to folks like it is the closest you have every component that you would kind of see in a city scaled down to a small town and then mesh together, right? Where in larger metro areas, activity and organizations and individuals and groups of people have such large pockets of activity that they're able to insulate themselves. Here, no one group is big enough to insulate themselves outside of maybe just like the difference of being a university community versus engaging in the town. But even that doesn't really happen. There's a lot of crossover and activity there. So yes, recurring guests is in the plan. I really want to do it as a benchmark for kind of a year, multi-year growth and revisit folks. And the same thing for like my personal growth with the podcast. Like when we're at 500 guests, right? Then it's reasonable to go back you know, a couple years prior, and then start picking out, you know, some really significant guests that have made particular strides or that you just want to touch base with again.
So if we hit that milestone of views, he might have me back, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, I mean, yeah, dude, I'll have you back regardless. In like 3 to 5 years, whether you are here or somewhere else,
living on the streets of St. Louis, homeless.
Yeah, I don't think that will be the case, but but that is, that's another motivating component. Like, understanding that at any point in time, like the comfortable life that you're living could just go away, right? Like it's a motivating thing. Like, you got to work or else
there's a fire under your ass.
Yeah.
Yep.
100%. So, I think that's it, man. I'm at like 105. You got anything else before I jump out here?
You can view my portfolio and my business website at quippedmedia.com, QUIPPED media.com.
Quippedmedia.com.
That's my company. You can see my work there. Not particularly like proud of it. I have a lot of the work that I've done and paid for up there, but I haven't done like a personal project that I'm passionate about yet. That I'm like, this is me, right? It's always been stuff that I've had to follow the client's guidelines for. So that's the one thing that I'm hoping with like this video creation, like in tutorial, is like, this is something I packaged up and built myself and can actually be proud of, you know? But yeah, you can reach out to me there.
That's it.
That's it.
There you go. Quippedmedia.com. Episode 86, WTF Carbondale podcast. Have a good one, folks. Whatever that one may be.